That, of course, is the wrong piece of tape. That's Daniel Surer talking about Iraq. Well, a debate is heating up here in the U.S. over the use of sports logos and names that may be ethnically insensitive. An appeal board of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office canceled the trademark registration of the Washington Redskins today. The agency said the team's controversial name is disparaging to Native Americans. This ruling could give ammunition to critics who say the word Redskin is offensive and are urging the owner to change it. To share their views on this ruling and issue, we have Karenne Wood, who is a Monacan Indian and the director of the Virginia Indian Heritage Program, as well as Cliff Crosby, a former professional football player, and they both join us from Washington, D.C. Cliff and Karenne, welcome to Arise America. Thank you so much for being here. Cliff, I can see you, so I'll ask you the first question. Of course, this has been an ongoing controversy for quite some time. Tell me what your opinion is of this ruling of revoking the patents.
So my understanding of the whole process was that 5 Native Americans representing 4 tribes brought this to the U.S. to the league offices back in 2006. And from the understanding that I'm aware of is that the patent trademark has the ability that if it's offensive to a certain group of people, they have the ability to revoke their trademark in that patent. So for me, if it's offensive and it's offensive to their culture, then I believe they have a basis for it, and they can do that. But this is not going to go away that easy. I mean, Dan Snyder is going to fight this. It's going to be held up in court for a while.
Yeah, and Daniel Snyder, the owner of the Washington Redskins, has said repeatedly he will not change the name. He says it's not meant to be offensive. That is a part of the tradition of this team. You just made a very interesting point, and that is if this is in fact offensive, then perhaps there should be a change. But I have to believe, in light of the controversy, some who say it's not offensive, of course, many Native Americans and Native American organizations say that it is, that if this were a pejorative about any other ethnic group in this country, there'd be no debate here.
Right, and that might be the case, and I think it's a very sensitive subject because of the history of the Native Americans and how things happened a long, long time ago before all of our times. And, it's almost weird because I understand Dan Snyder saying, hey, I paid hundreds of millions of dollars. I should be able to do with my team what I want to do with it. So it's a tough debate, and as a former player, I don't think we don't get into that whole team name and things like that because, again, we put on the jersey, we play the game. We're not asked to be the marketing department. We're not asked to do those things.
I was just going to ask you that, Cliff, is about whether or not a controversy like this trickles down to the actual players. I know that you have a job to do out there on the field, but is it a possibility that at least for some players, and I have to think there are some Native American professional football players, that this is an important issue for?
I think it's specific to their culture as well. So unfortunately, in society, how most of us thinks, hey, if it's not bothering me or offensive to me, then I guess it's none of my business. And that's how some people take it. But I think when it comes to things like this, when you're totally in a fight with the owner, depending on your role on the team and your position, you kind of mind your own business and say, you know what? This is bigger than me. This is bigger than the team. And Daniel Snyder and the front office staff, they need to fight this fight in the public eye.
All right, Cliff, stand by. I want to add to this conversation Karenne Wood, as we just introduced her earlier on in the segment. Welcome to Arise America, Karenne. Can you just sort of describe your reaction and your emotions about this ruling?
Hi, I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, it's kind of an emotional moment for me and for a lot of Native people because I think over time we've come to view the word Redskins as a slur to us and as a denigrating term. And so for us, this is a step forward. This is indicating that in the public eye, this term is inappropriate. And it's something that a lot of people have been saying for a really long time.
So interesting that you did say it's an emotional moment for you. You grew up in Virginia. You grew up, if you will, in Redskin country, meaning the professional football team. Can you describe then what it felt like to grow up in this area where this team and this name was so pervasive?
I did. I spent most of my childhood in Fairfax, and it was the Redskins and the Cowboys. That was the competition. And I guess I just felt like it was something we would always have to live with, just like we would have to always live with the characterization of our people as savages in textbooks And every time I would announce I was an American Indian, somebody would go, you know, stupid stuff like that. It's just the stereotypes that American people have come to accept as normal.
And do you find that to still be the case, Karenne? I mean, I like to believe that in 2014 we progressed to some level of enlightenment, but do you find that even now that the Native American community is still fighting those same old stereotypes and misconceptions?
I'm sorry to say that I do, and it's endemic. It's across the country, really across the world. You know, people still think of Indians as people wearing buckskin outfits and, you know, feathers in their hair riding horses. And we don't accept that everybody can change over time, every culture, except the American Indian. You know, we're still asked, how much Indian are you? No one of any other race is asked that question. And so there are these persistent problems. But I would say the biggest problem is one of invisibility. And that's one that's particularly relevant here, because Native Americans don't constitute a large enough voting bloc to change public perception without a lot of help. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Karenne, do you chalk this up to ignorance, or is there a bit of maliciousness to it, in your view?
I think most people are not malicious. I think most Americans that I've run into they want to be allies. And if they're educated and their view of history is expanded, they say, oh, wow, I didn't know, you know, such and such, Pocahontas didn't really save John Smith, for example. You know, stories that we've all come to view as sacred. And when they realize that that's a story they've been told and not, it's not inclusive of Native people's perspective or most people of color, then they want to know more. They want to help out.
We've covered this story as it has evolved over time, and we've even had other guests here on Rise America that are Native American that don't find the term Redskin offensive. Also, as I understand it, Native American former tribal chief Robert Two Eagles Green has spoken out in defense of the name. What do you make of those members of the Native American community who say, hey, this is really not that big a deal?
Well, I would say that everyone is entitled to their opinion, and it's not, we shouldn't expect everybody to have the same view. You know, some folks feel like it's an honor to them. That's okay. You know, I'm not going to argue that everybody has to have the same opinion, because we're not all one big family. You know, we're just as complicated as any other group of people. But I would say the majority of Native people probably don't find the term Redskins an honor, even though we keep being told that it is. And I have a few friends who have said, I dare you to go up to an Indian reservation and start calling people Redskins to their face. See how they react. See if they feel that that's an honorable term. I think it's a fair thing to ask.
Indeed, as Cliff mentioned, and Cliff, thanks for standing by. I didn't forget that you were there. You know, Cliff predicted that that Dan Snyder will fight this, that this is not quite over yet. Cliff, let me just ask you before we get out of this, do you think that there is anything, I don't know how well you know Dan Snyder personally, but do you think that there is any argument that can be made, anything that could be said to convince him to change the name of his team willingly?
I don't think so. I think when you as wealthy as Dan Snyder and you own a team and you've earned that right to purchase that team, I think it comes down to him with principle. You know, I purchased this team, it's my team, I get to do what I want. And I think he's just trying to make a statement that, you know, the law or no one can tell me that I need to change the name. Unless he starts to lose real money and financial, I think that's the only way that you'll see him make that change. Right now, it hasn't hit him in the pockets. It hasn't hit him in the bank. So until that happens, I just think he's going to stand his ground and just say, you know what? It's my team. I get to do what I want to it. And it's America, and this is the American dream. And I think that's what he's standing on.
Yeah, as one of my colleagues right here at Arise News likes to say, when it's not about the money, it's about the money. We're going to have to leave it right there. Cliff Crosby, Karenne Wood, thank you both.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.